Carl Jung spent his life studying what most people dismiss, the hidden messages of the unconscious. Among his most startling discoveries was this: before disaster strikes, the unconscious often whispers warnings through dreams. Jung once treated a man who dreamed of standing before a crumbling bridge. In the dream, he hesitated, then stepped forward, and the bridge gave way beneath him. The patient laughed it off as nonsense. Weeks later, he suffered a nervous breakdown. Jung saw the dream not as coincidence, but as prophecy. The unconscious knew collapse was coming long before the conscious mind admitted it. Dreams, Jung believed, anticipate. They show us what is weak, unstable, or ignored, so that disaster doesn't have to arrive unannounced. What if your dreams were trying to save you, warning you of dangers before they arrive? Jung believed the unconscious speaks in symbols, and when we ignore them, life has a way of forcing us to listen. In this video, we'll explore how your dreams can reveal disasters before they happen. Subscribe now, and let's step into the language of the night together. Jung explained it through what he called the compensatory function of dreams. Our waking ego avoids unpleasant truths. We deny our fear, our fragility, our flaws, but the unconscious refuses silence. It compensates for what we will not see, and it speaks in dreams. If the ego insists everything is fine, the dream shows floods, fire, collapse. If the ego insists I am strong, the dream shows weakness, injury, death, not to punish us, but to restore balance. The dream is the psyche's early warning system. Perhaps the most unsettling are the dreams Jung reported before literal death. Patients described journeys, farewells, or images of thresholds. Jung's own dream before his near-fatal illness showed him traveling to a faraway temple, as if preparing to cross into another world. He believed these dreams were not random. They were the unconscious preparing the psyche for what the ego refused to face. In an age when Freud saw dreams as wish fulfillment and modern science dismissed them as brain static, Jung took them as vital communications. To him, dreams were like letters from the deep, coded, symbolic, but urgent. He wrote, "Dreams are the guiding words of the soul. Why should I henceforth not love my dreams and not make their riddling images into objects of my daily consideration?" For Jung, ignoring dreams wasn't just foolish, it was dangerous. Before every disaster, the unconscious gives a sign. A dream of collapse before breakdown, a dream of betrayal before divorce, a dream of death before illness. Jung's warning was simple. If you ignore these messages, the unconscious will stop whispering and start breaking. Why does the unconscious speak to us in dreams? Why not tell us plainly, in daylight words, what we need to know? Jung's answer was unsettling, because the conscious mind cannot bear it. The ego lives in denial. It clings to comfort, certainty, and control. If you are heading toward collapse, overwork, betrayal, illness, the ego insists everything is fine. To admit otherwise would shatter its fragile illusion. But the unconscious sees what the ego refuses. It registers every imbalance, every lie, every hidden danger. And when the gap between truth and illusion becomes too wide, the unconscious begins to warn you. Not with logic, but with symbols. Dreams don't use plain language because plain truth is unbearable. If you dreamed, your marriage will end in a year, or you're heading toward a breakdown, you'd likely deny it upon waking. The ego would dismiss it, repress it, forget it. But if the dream shows a crumbling house, a sinking ship, or a flooded room, the image slips past the defenses. It unsettles without triggering outright denial. Symbols are the language of the soul, powerful enough to break through, gentle enough to be remembered. Jung described dreams as the psyche's balancing system. If you are overconfident, your dream shows failure. If you are too rigid, your dream shows chaos. If you are blind to danger, your dream paints disaster. The unconscious is not cruel. It doesn't predict tragedy for entertainment. It warns in images so you can act before collapse. The unconscious never wastes energy. If a dream arrives with striking imagery, intense emotion, or repeats over and over, it is because something in waking life desperately needs your attention. Ignore it, and the unconscious will escalate, from subtle dream warnings to disturbing nightmares, to psychological or even physical breakdowns. Dreams are not random static. They are warnings disguised as symbols. The ego may lie, but the unconscious cannot. Jung's rule was clear. The more frightening or absurd the dream seems, the more serious its message. Not all dreams matter. Many are fragments, the mind sweeping up the dust of daily life. But Jung warned, when dreams repeat, when their imagery is charged with emotion, or when they leave you shaken long after waking, they are warnings. And again, the same motifs appeared. Archetypal images of collapse, chaos, and confrontation. Falling. Few dreams are as universal as falling. You wake with a jolt, heart racing, as though the floor has disappeared beneath you. Jung read this as a loss of control, the ego clinging to stability, but the unconscious screaming that the ground is already crumbling. Falling often comes before breakdowns, failures, or humiliations that the waking mind refuses to acknowledge. Floods. Dreams of water rising, of floods overwhelming homes and streets, are among the clearest warnings. Jung saw water as the symbol of the unconscious itself. When it overflows, it means repressed emotions are rising to the surface. A flood dream often precedes emotional collapse, rage, grief, or despair that has been dammed up too long. The unconscious warns, release the pressure, or it will burst through on its own. Crumbling houses. The house is one of the most important dream symbols. Jung believed it represents the psyche itself, the architecture of the mind. When you dream of cracked walls, collapsing roofs, or crumbling foundations, it is not about real estate. It is about your own foundation. A warning that what you have built, your marriage, your career, your identity, rests on unstable ground. Ignore it, and the collapse will come in waking life. Being chased. One of the most terrifying dream experiences is being pursued by an animal, a faceless figure, a shadowy stranger. Jung saw this not as random terror, but as the shadow itself. Everything you refuse to acknowledge, anger, fear, forbidden desire, appears as the pursuer. You run, not from the dream figure, but from yourself. The warning is clear. Stop running. Face what chases you, or it will catch you in waking life, often in destructive ways. Death. Death dreams unsettle most people, but Jung insisted they are rarely literal. More often, they signal the end of a phase of life, the death of a relationship, a career, or an outdated identity. But when ignored, these dreams grow darker. If you cling to what should end, the unconscious will push harder. Dreams of death are the psyche's way of saying, let go before life rips it from your hands. Falling, floods, crumbling houses, being chased, death. These are not just nightmares. They are coded warnings, dramatizations of the truths you refuse to see by day. The unconscious is generous. It shows you disaster before it arrives. But if you dismiss the dream as just a dream, the warning will play out in reality. Jung's patients often came to him only after their lives had collapsed, after the marriage ended, after the breakdown struck, after the illness was already consuming them. But when he asked about their dreams, a pattern appeared. The psyche had been warning them long before disaster arrived. One patient, a brilliant academic, kept dreaming of bridges breaking. Each time he dismissed it, he told Jung, "It's just nerves, my work is fine." Months later, he collapsed mid-lecture, unable to speak. The bridge wasn't literal, it was his mind, cracking under the weight of denial. The dream had warned him, "You are close to breaking." But he didn't listen. A woman came to Jung reporting recurring dreams of being trapped in a crumbling house. Every night she tried to repair it, patching holes, fixing leaks, but the walls kept falling apart. In waking life, she insisted her marriage was solid, but eventually her husband confessed years of betrayal. The house was never about bricks and mortar. It was about her relationship. The unconscious had shown her what her ego refused to face. Jung documented another case. A man repeatedly dreamed of drowning. Water rose around him until he couldn't breathe. Weeks later, he suffered a severe lung infection. Jung didn't believe the dream caused the illness. Rather, he believed the unconscious was attuned to subtle signals the conscious mind ignored. Small bodily imbalances, hidden stress, dangerous patterns. The dream amplified them, turning whispers into floods. This was Jung's insight. Dreams escalate when ignored. First comes a subtle dream, a wall cracking, water dripping. If you don't listen, the images grow darker. A house collapsing, a flood destroying everything. Ignore it still, and the unconscious stops warning. It forces you to experience in waking life what you refused in sleep. Disaster becomes the final dream made real. Jung's message is chilling. Disasters rarely arrive unannounced. They appear first in the theater of the night. Collapse doesn't surprise the unconscious. It only surprises the ego. If the unconscious warns us before disaster, why don't we listen? Why do so many people only recognize the dream's truth when it's too late? Jung's answer was stark, because the ego is stubborn and society is deaf. The ego is built to protect its fragile sense of control. To admit danger feels like weakness. To acknowledge collapse feels like failure. So the ego clings to its illusion. Everything is fine. A man dreams of drowning, but says, "I'm just stressed." A woman dreams of betrayal, but insists, "My marriage is strong." A worker dreams of a crumbling building, but laughs it off as nonsense. The ego insists on blindness, even as the unconscious raises alarms. Even if you take the dream seriously, the world will tell you not to. Dreams are treated as random, childish, unscientific. Society teaches us to trust numbers, not symbols. To trust logic, not images. But Jung warned, the unconscious does not speak in statistics. It speaks in stories, archetypes, and myths. When we dismiss this language, we silence the very system designed to protect us. The deeper reason is more painful. Sometimes, we prefer disaster to change. Facing the dream means admitting that something in life must shift. The job that's draining you, the relationship that's dying, the lie you've been living. That truth feels unbearable. And so, we ignore the dream and cling to the illusion, until reality forces us to face what sleep already showed us. The unconscious never hides the truth. It is the ego that refuses to see it, and the culture that tells us not to listen. That's why dreams feel absurd or frightening. Not because they are nonsense, but because they are the only way the unconscious can break through your resistance. Jung insisted that dreams are not puzzles to be solved once, but conversations to be continued. The unconscious is always speaking, but most of us ignore its language. His method was designed to reverse this silence, to train the waking mind to hear what the night already knows. Step 1. Record. The first rule is simple. Write it down. Dreams fade within minutes. By breakfast, most are gone. Jung told his patients, keep a notebook by your bed. When you wake, even in the middle of the night, capture every detail. The house, the flood, the stranger's face. Don't judge, don't analyze, just record. Because what you dismiss as trivial tonight may prove vital when the pattern emerges months later. Step 2. Amplify. Jung called the next step amplification. Take a dream symbol, say, a lion, and expand it outward. What does a lion mean in myth, in religion, in culture? Strength, danger, pride. Then ask, why would your psyche choose that image? Amplification honors the dream as archetypal. It's not just about you. It's about the symbols humanity has carried for centuries. By amplifying, you step into the universal story your unconscious is drawing from. Step 3. Personalize. But symbols are not one size fits all. After amplification, you must bring it back home. A lion for one person may mean courage. For another, it may recall a childhood trauma at the zoo. For another still, it may represent an authority figure who dominates them. Jung's rule, symbols are collective, but meanings are personal. Always ask, what does this symbol mean in the story of my life right now? Step 4. Act. The final step is the most important. Act. Dreams warn for a reason. Recording them is not enough. Amplifying them is not enough. Even understanding them is not enough. The unconscious demands change. If the house is crumbling in your dreams, ask what in your life is unstable, and repair it. If water is flooding your nights, ask what emotions you're holding back, and release them before they drown you. Act before the warning becomes reality. Most people dismiss dreams until disaster proves them right. But Jung believed the entire point of listening was to prevent disaster, to see the cracks before collapse, to change course before the wreck. He called this a form of psychic hygiene, tending to the unconscious as carefully as we tend to the body. Because just as ignoring chest pain leads to heart attack, ignoring dreams leads to psychological and spiritual breakdown. Jung's method is clear. Record the dream before it vanishes. Amplify its symbols to unlock their archetypal weight. Personalize the meaning to your life. Act before disaster arrives. The unconscious never wastes its breath. If it speaks, it is because your waking life is headed towards something you do not yet see. Jung warned, the unconscious does not repeat itself endlessly for no reason. If you ignore the dream, it will not vanish. It will escalate. The more you deny, the harsher the message becomes, until the warning is no longer symbolic, but real. At first, the unconscious whispers, a cracked wall in a dream, a rising tide in the night. If you ignore it, the dreams grow louder, floods, fires, collapses, until finally the psyche stops warning and starts breaking. Burnout, panic attacks, depression. These are often the disasters of an ignored unconscious. What the dream tried to prevent, the waking life now experiences. Jung also believed the psyche speaks through the body. When dreams are dismissed, the body often becomes the canvas. Dreams of suffocation may precede lung illness. Dreams of broken bones may come before real accidents. Jung suggested the unconscious registers imbalances the conscious cannot detect, and when ignored, the imbalance finds expression through sickness. The dream said, "Pay attention." The body says, "Now you have no choice." Relationships, too, carry this cost. A dream of betrayal ignored becomes real betrayal discovered too late. A dream of distance dismissed becomes the quiet collapse of intimacy. The psyche does not send warnings to frighten you. It sends them to give you time. But if you refuse to see, disaster plays out in waking life. The deepest price, Jung said, is spiritual emptiness. A lifetime of ignored dreams leaves the soul hollow. You may succeed, achieve, impress, but inside, there is a gnawing sense that you walked past countless doorways to transformation because you were too rational to listen. The unconscious doesn't punish you. It simply withholds what you refused. And in that silence, life becomes flat, gray, and meaningless. Ignore your dreams, and the cost is inevitable. Collapse, illness, betrayal, or emptiness. The unconscious will always have the last word. The only choice is whether you hear it in time. Return now to the man who dreamed of cracked foundations. In his first dream, he ignored the message, laughed it off, and months later watched his marriage collapse. But imagine him differently. Imagine he wakes, shaken, and this time he listens. He writes down the dream. He asks what the foundation represents. He realizes it is his relationship, neglected, strained by silence. And instead of waiting for disaster, he speaks. He repairs. He faces what he once denied. The house does not crumble. The dream saved him. This is what Jung wanted us to understand. Disasters rarely arrive unannounced. Long before the collapse, the unconscious begins to whisper. In symbols, in stories, in nightmares that refuse to let you rest. Ignore them, and the price is ruin. But listen, truly listen, and those same dreams become your guide, steering you away from disaster, back toward wholeness. Most people want certainty. They want a dream dictionary, a one-to-one map. This image means that outcome. But Jung refused that simplicity. Dreams do not hand you answers, they hand you questions. And in how you respond to those questions lies your fate. Will you dismiss the flood as random brain static? Or will you see it as the warning it is, the tide of unspoken grief rising in your soul? Will you ignore the dream of being chased? Or will you finally turn, face the pursuer, and meet the shadow you've run from for years? The dream does not decide. You do. Jung's words echo with unsettling clarity. The dream is the small hidden door in the deepest and most intimate sanctum of the soul. Through that door, disaster comes, or salvation. The unconscious will always warn you. The only question is whether you walk through the door awake, or whether you're dragged through it in collapse. Disasters rarely arrive unannounced. The unconscious warns you first. The question is, are you listening? If this stirred something in you, subscribe to Factspire TV. Here, we don't dismiss the whispers of the unconscious. We listen to them, because they may be the only thing standing between order and collapse.